Exactly how deep a wound or how great a problem can a good old fashioned apology of, I'm sorry, really fix? Hi, this is Barry Phillips of Timid toward day one of Miqqetz at the end. And we are in Bereshit or Genesis chapter number 41. Let's slide down to verse number 14 that says, Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon. He shaved and changed his garments and came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it. Now, I myself heard it said of you that you understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. Let Elohim answer Pharaoh with peace. Reading the first part of this chapter, you will read the details of this two-part dream that Pharaoh had concerning 7 cows, fat, and then 7 other ones that are skinny and bony, and then a repeating of that pertaining to grain. So Joseph is suddenly brought up out of the dungeon, out of the middle of nowhere. He woke up that morning expecting life to go on as it had the day before. Suddenly he's washed, shaved, clothed, and standing before Pharaoh, and no pressure. Hey, interpret this dream that I've had. Joseph, he may not understand all that is getting ready to transpire. But in the middle of everything that radically improves for his life in 24 hours' time, he went to sleep the night before in a dungeon, a prisoner. He will go to sleep that night, viceroy or prime minister of all Mitzrayim or Egypt. It's a rocket rise here. Yet he will have a relational upset that is going to take a period of some time now to resolve for him. Like most everything else, we want a quick resolve to our problems, especially when they are relational issues. We want to fix it and just get on with life, and a more pleasant life at that. But you can't just go to Google and type in your problem with someone and get an easy answer applied and fix everything. When one is estranged or a group of people are estranged among themselves, it's going to take some work. And it is relational work that most folks are not very good at. For example, if you had wounded me, you did something, said something, failed to do something, and I'm traumatized, wounded, offended, etc. by that. You find out and you come to me and say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Please forgive me. If it was just a moment ago that the offense took place, okay, I thought something else might be the problem, or, I didn't think that you really meant it that way. When it's going on for years, and what you said or didn't say or did or didn't do has affected the way that I have then related with you and with those around you, those I thought were friends with you, or even extended relationships elsewhere, if it has affected me, then you coming to me and saying, well, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was a problem. I've got a whole mess. It could have been a mess going on for years to try to fix. If I have become dysfunctional because of an offense or a wound, and especially a relational, emotional wound, how do you fix that? I may have just transferred all of this stuff between you and I to all of this other set of relationships, and I've started creating my own problems. Now, who's to blame for that? Well, ultimately, it's my fault. I can choose or not choose to allow someone's offense to affect the rest of my life. But when we understand that some of these offenses or issues are also not just relational, but spiritual, then we're talking about potentially affecting someone's ability to relate to their Heavenly Father, stunting their own spiritual growth, all because of something someone caused to happen. The primary goal is to get it out in the open, get it worked through, having these conversations that are necessary so that we can get back onto a road of forgiveness and, if possible, rebuilding trust. Now, things really get complicated because there are things that other people don't know. Let's take the siblings of Joseph, for example. At the time that they are upset at Joseph and they are plotting his literal demise, and he ends up being taken out of their area and down into Mitzrayim, and they literally don't know what happened to him. More on that in a moment. There are things that they don't know. A few generations earlier, Abraham had received a prophecy from Yah, all the way back in chapter 15, that his descendants were going to go down to Mitzrayim, to Egypt, and there they were going to suffer for a few hundred years, 400 years, and then they would be brought back to this land and receive it. These brothers had no idea that they were going to be a significant part of that prophecy. At the time that they were dealing with Joseph, they had sat down to eat while he was in the pit. They had no idea that there was going to be a soon approaching scarcity of food. They had no idea that for their very survival, they were going to have to go down to Mitzrayim and get food. They had no idea who was going to sell them that food. They were pawns in an overarching, enveloping prophetic scenario that they had no clue about. Their jealousies and their envies, their offenses at Joseph, because of his personality and youthful exuberance, lacking wisdom and promoting himself, they got so worked up and so overwhelmed at that they were blinded to see his potential and his real abilities. They didn't want to see those things. What they wanted to see was the worst in him. And when they had put him in the pit, they intended to pull him out and sell him. But when they got to the pit, he was gone. If you go back to chapter number 37 and you look at verse number 28, it says, when Midianite traders passed by, they pulled Joseph out of the pit, lifted him up, sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and the Ishmaelites took Joseph to Mitzrayim. The next verse says, Reuben went to the pit and he wasn't in there. So the brothers intended to go back to the pit and pull up Joseph and sell him. They never got the chance. Someone beat them to that punch. So they literally had no idea where Joseph is at. They could have assumed that he got into Mitzrayim, but they really didn't know. So they had to cook up a story and fast about him being slain by an animal to cover their tracks, but they had to be bewildered as, what do you think happened to him? Oftentimes, what it comes down to when we're having issues, and this time of year, for many people in their holiday celebrations, there are uncomfortable and awkward gatherings where folks who have been on the outs with each other are now in the same room and trying to play nice and stay out of each other's way. How many of those situations are because of unknown facts, unknown feelings, missing information? If you're carrying a wound and you're carrying a bag full of stuff, find a way to work it out. Get it out in the open. let healing start, and you just might find out you don't know the whole story. More on this tomorrow. Until then, shalom.